Hello everyone, this is Mr. D, Double D. On this Thursday, I wanted to provide you with information regarding the Industrial Revolution, in particular, industrial age thinkers, people who are going to be offering their thoughts, solutions to certain problems, issues regarding the Industrial Revolution, which is going to be start in England and eventually spread to other parts of Europe. And again, if we look at the slide here, you will see information regarding industrial age thinkers. We talked about this information this week, causes of the Industrial Revolution. You had an agricultural revolution with certain machines being invented, such as the mechanical seed drill, which is going to lead to better food production. An increase in the supply of food is going to lead to a population explosion. And we talked about the dramatic growth of the population in Europe. A population explosion is going to lead to an increase for the demand for goods. A greater demand for goods is going to lead to an energy revolution, which means that instead of people making things by hand in their cottages, they're now going to see factories sprout up all over the different cities in Europe, and they're going to have machines that are going to produce these goods. If we think of the textile industry, if we think of the spinning jenny, or the powered loom in terms of Edwin Cartwright, who was the inventor of it, all that's going to make or enable the production of goods at a faster pace. If we think about also close to home here, the idea of a new industrial city, not too far from Sparta, we have Paterson, New Jersey, who was founded in part by Alexander Hamilton as being America's first industrial city. Why was Paterson chosen? Because of one natural resource, and that being the Passaic River. If you go there today, you could see what remains of these factories that once existed in Paterson, New Jersey, as well as the Great Falls of Paterson, a tremendous source of energy that's going to power these rivers located along the Passaic River. Now, with this rapid urbanization, you're going to have it mixing with an unregulated market, which is going to bring about new and intense issues. Now, what were some of these issues? We talked about a little about this week, the length of the workday, people working 10 plus hours, child labor, children being employed, in which you're reading about and preparing your report on the conditions in the factories in industrial England, women working with children, fair wages, safety conditions, in particular children. Again, you're seeing this in the primary sources, being asked to put heavy boxes on their backs or to go and fix the machines, where a number of them lost fingers, digits, as well as the poor air quality in the factories. For example, the fibers going in the air, breathing them into their lungs. You also had a growing population, the distribution of wealth, where some people became very wealthy and others remained poor, such as children and women who worked in these factories, as well as the emergence of strong, powerful companies, or what becomes known as monopolies, where you had certain companies who dominated certain products, certain industries. If we think about in America, and you learn more about this in US too, you did have monopolies. If you ask your parents or your grandparents, AT&T was one example of a monopoly in terms of telecommunication that existed in the US, and that the US government broke up, and what you had was the baby bells. If you think about Sprint, Verizon, all those are offshoots of AT&T, which at one time was a monopoly in America in regards to telecommunications. Now, what we're going to see in a moment are two groups of people, industrial age thinkers. One is known as the capitalists, people who believe in profit, and the other is utopian socialists, idealists. regarding society, regarding industry. And if we look at this slide right here, you will see that there are three group of people for the capitalists: Adam Smith, Thomas Malthus, David Ricardo. On the other side here, we have Karl Marx, Robert Owen, and Jeremy Bentham. Capitalists, utopian socialists. Adam Smith, we talked about earlier this year. He's from Scotland. He believed in the free exchange of goods and services, or hands-off. It would help everyone, an unregulated economy, not just the rich. A free market would produce more goods at lower prices, making them affordable to everyone. And a healthy economy where the government really did not have a role in it would encourage capitalists, people who had the means of production, to reinvest their profits in new businesses. New businesses would provide more jobs, which would enable people to have money to buy more products. And again, the cycle would repeat itself. In addition to Adam Smith, you had this person, Thomas Malthus. And he looked at the population, and he said this, is that if the population keeps growing and growing and growing, the amount of food available to people is going to just be exhausted. It's just going to the population is going to outpace the food supply, and that the human race would become extinct. But what Malthus didn't take into consideration are these population controls: war, disease, and famine. He still had famines. Disease, if you think about, tragically, in our society today, 2020, the effect that COVID-19 has had on our population, the amount of people have lost their lives. And what Malthus basically said was this, that if the population kept increasing, the poor would suffer. Why? Because the food supply, there wouldn't be enough food available. People would starve and just suffer in general. And the last person we have here regarding the capitalists is David Ricardo. David Ricardo believed in something called the iron law of wages. And he basically said this, that if families kept having more children because wages were high, it would actually just flood the labor pool, the amount of people that could be employed. And it would tell the people who own the factories, the capitalists, that they didn't really have to offer at least high wages. They could offer low wages. And they can only, basically employ a certain amount of people, and certain people wouldn't be employed. It would lead to higher employment. So what Ricardo is basically arguing here is that in terms of children, having a certain amount of children in a family, not just have as many children as one wanted. Now, in terms of the utopian socialists, you have this person here, utilitarianism. Jeremy Bentham, the greatest numbers should decide the actions of governments and people. All laws or actions should be judged by their utility or their usefulness in society. So Bentham was philosophical, believed in utilitarianism. Again, the greatest number for the greatest number should decide the actions of governments and people. In addition to Bentham, you had Robert Owen. All right, Robert Owen, the idea of socialism. People as a whole, rather than private individuals, would own and operate the means of production. And he inspired communities in New Lanark and New Harmony. He was Scottish, refused a good thing here, positive, to have children working in his factories, campaigned for laws that limited child labor. And he also believed in the idea of the organization of labor unions. If you think about American society today, we do have laws regarding child labor. Certain age, you have to get working papers. Past that age, up to the age of 18, you can only work a certain amount of hours, time. Once you pass 18, of course, that changes. Still, we have labor laws today. We have labor unions. You might know someone in your family who belongs to a labor union. If you think about professional sports, Major League Baseball has a players union. The NFL has a players union. Hockey, basketball, and again, certain major industries such as electrical, plumbing, teachers. Those are all unions today in American society today, which are meant to protect the rights of workers, also collectively bargain for wages as well. Now, the last person that we have here today, who's probably the most popular in terms of the utopian socialists, is Karl Marx, giving the peace sign here. He wrote the Communist Manifesto. He starts in Germany. He gets kicked out of Germany, ends up in England, meets up with Friedrich Engels. And what he's going to talk about here in his book, The Communist Manifesto, is the idea of communism, which is a form of socialism that sees a struggle between the employers and employees as unavoidable. And that he argued that the entire course of history was a struggle between the haves, which was the bourgeoisie, the owners of the means of production, and the have-nots, which was the proletariat or the working class. And that the have-nots, the working class, would rise up and revolt and overthrow the haves, the bourgeoisie, the owners of the means of production. Of course, what Marx didn't take into consideration is that conditions would improve in the workplace regarding workers, again, labor unions. But still today in our world, we still have countries who have adopted communism as their form of government. If you think of North Korea as one example, if you think of Vietnam, Cuba has a communist government, even though they've started to relax a little bit to have some form of capitalism. China is still communist, of course, but again, they still have relaxed and still have some type of free market, but at least their government is still communist. So this is information regarding these industrial age thinkers, which goes along with the Industrial Revolution. I would like for you to review this information. On Tuesday when we meet live, we will go over them. I'll probably throw some questions into the classroom regarding them. If you have any questions in the interim, please reach out to me. If not, I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.